Hello, my friends. I would like, first and foremost, to thank you for this opportunity to share with you some reflections on the Pope's document, the Christus Vivit, what is technically called the Apostolic Exhortation. My name is Father Fabio Attard. I have just finished 12 years as General Counselor for Youth Ministry of the congregation. I also cherish the moments I spent with you in the Philippines with the Salesian Youth Movement, sharing some of the journeys, some of the opportunities and meetings that were happening exactly at the same time that I was visiting your beautiful country. I am asked to give a reflection on the structure of Christus Vivit. Let's start by saying, what is this document? Whenever there is a moment that the church leaders from all over the world meet to discuss topics of interest for the journey, the pastoral journey of the church, there are different phases. The first phase is what is called to recognize how the situation is. And in the Synod on Young People, which took place more or less 2 years ago, a year and a half ago exactly, there was a whole exercise of listening to the youth within the church, but also to young people outside our own church environment. Then there was a second phase of a wider reflection, but also a more focused reflection, a meeting of young people themselves in the Vatican. And this led to the actual synod, where there were the bishops and also 37 young people. While the first meeting of recognizing brought forward what is called a working paper, technically called Instrumentum Laboris, an instrument for work, the Synod document the Synod experience came out with a final document, which somehow synthesized what went on during that Synod, the bishops and young people. Then after around 6 months, the Pope came out with his own message, somehow reflecting this journey and putting into this Pope message himself and his message and this apostolic exhortation many of the things that were already reflected on and proposed. And this is what I'm going to talk about. This document is called Christus Vivit. Now in English at times it is translated as Christ is alive. It's stronger than that. Christ lives. And this is the first reflection I would like to share with you, my dear friends. Christ is not somebody who is alive, but Christ lives around me and within me. With this personal, deep conviction that I share with you the structure of Christus Vivit. Now, why is it important that we get to know Christus Vivit? It's important because for those of us, and thanks be to God, there are many young people who would like and are actually engaged in the youth ministry of the church. Christus Vivit is one of those letters which encourages us. It's an encouragement directly from the Pope. That's why it is called apostolic exhortation, exhorting us, encouraging us, helping us to see the bigger picture, but not something out there, but the bigger picture as something around me. The bigger picture where I am an active agent, I am a protagonist. I hope that while I am reflecting on this Christus Vivit, it would be interesting that each one of you has already a copy in his and her hand, so as to follow what I'm going to say. Christus Vivit has 9 chapters, and we can say one of the approaches is, let us divide this document into 3 sections. The first one is very spiritual, but spiritual in a lively way, spiritual in the sense that it is speaking to me, it is speaking to us. It is saying something to where are we rooted? Where would we like to find ourselves? Before we started asking ourselves, what can we do? No. We precisely do what Christ did with his disciples. Just let us take some time and discover where we are, discover how much we are loved, discover this spiritual dynamism that is surrounding us. And the first 3 chapters, chapter 1, what does the Word of God has to say to us, young people? Chapter 2, about Jesus himself, ever young. And chapter 3, you, young people, are the now of God. My suggestion, my dear friends, is this. If after this meeting that you are having, within the presences where you are, within the youth groups that you are actually belonging at this moment, just take one chapter at a time, whichever one you want to take, and just read it beforehand. Reflect on it in a personal way, then come together. Because the richness that Christus Vivit has can only be discovered not only if we read it or we hear it being read, but on the contrary, if we are able to savor it, to read it with the eyes of the heart, and to listen to what the Pope is saying to us with the ears of the heart. So those first 3 chapters, I suggest that we approach them in what is called contemplative manner. That is, in a way that, we would like to listen in a very deep way, in a very profound manner. Then we move on and we have another 2 chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5. And this is somehow the chapter 4 and chapter 5, and I would add here also chapter 6, they are more on us as young people. If in the first part we saw the spiritual area, the second part, chapters 4, 5, and 6, we are going to see the existential. That means our story. How is it developing? How is it developing? For us, living our own experience, there is a great message for each and every one of us. There is a God who loves, a God who saves, a God who is alive. And chapter 4 is precisely this energy, this strength, this message of hope that comes out. Once we go through the first 3 chapters where we contemplate where we are rooted, we discover in chapter 4 that we are encountering a God who is love, who saves, and who is alive. With his Spirit that we move on. Chapter 5 and chapter 6 strengthen the discovery of chapter 4. The paths of youth in chapter 5 is a whole experience where we need to find ourselves within a context that we listen and that we get encouraged, that we listen to others and we encourage others. Therefore, the issue of personal and relational challenges. Young people with roots who are able to cherish and favor their growth, but also to go out and favor that growth in others. So, my friends, look how beautiful this apostolic exhortation is. The first 3 chapters have to do with our, let's call it spirituality, our relationship with Christ in the church like Mary. The second 3 chapters, 4, 5, and 6, have to do with us as active agents that together we can go out. The last part of Christus Vivit, the apostolic exhortation, is about youth ministry. How do we go about it? The issue of vocation and the issue of discernment. Now, these last 3 chapters, I propose that with our educators, Salesians, lay people, adult educators who are accompanying us, we sit down, we reflect, and we evaluate whether our own experience of youth ministry, our groups and the different presences, are we approaching our experience, our pastoral experience, looking inward or looking outward? Are we an outgoing church or an inward-looking church? Do we prefer to remain enclosed in our niche, egoistically enclosed, or are ready to look out at youth ministry as outreach and growth, as the Pope himself invites us? Within this experience of youth ministry, we have to ask ourselves, we as young people, am I looking at my own life story as a project by God to me that I am interested to discover and to embrace? But my dear friends, try also to look at it from a proactive point of view. What do I mean? I mean that many of you have discovered what is God's project for them. Are you ready to accompany and to help others discover what is God's project for them? The vocational dimension is not simply a question of discovering what is God's call for me, but it's also a question of feeling challenged to help others to discover their life project. So you see, in this context, vocation is not only to become a priest, to become a nun, to become a religious. Vocation is much deeper and much wider than that. Vocation is discovering what is God saying to me. My ability to listen to Him and to discover myself encouraged by God to assume His project for me. Therefore, and this is chapter 9, very demanding chapter 9, but also very beautiful, the issue of discernment. Discernment. My dear brothers and sisters, if you truly want to discover what is God saying to you, you cannot do it on your own. You need to be accompanied. My encouragement is one: find a good, holy, wise spiritual director who can help you to listen to yourself, to listen what is God saying to you, and also to get encouraged, accompanied, strengthened, and sustained, so that what is God saying to me, I am ready to take it on board. I am ready to assume it. My dear friends, I conclude my message by encouraging you to participate in the online retreat, Lit, Christ Alive in Me. And remember, you are amongst the privileged ones who have this opportunity of being positively and proactively challenged by Jesus. Assume the challenge. It's a challenge of love. It's a challenge towards love. But please, don't keep it for yourself. Make sure you share it with others. My final word is a word of blessing. May God bless you. May you discover how much you are loved by God. And may you also discover the thirst that so many young people have to discover that from their part, they are also loved by God. May God bless you all.